and a significant escalation in President Trump's efforts to put the squeeze on a tyrant, specifically the Venezuelan dictator Nicolas Maduro. This video, released tonight by the Attorney General, shows U.S. forces fast roping from helicopters, storming the deck with their guns drawn as they seize control of a massive oil tanker off Venezuela's coast. Word of the mission, the surprise mission, came from the president himself today.
As you probably know, we've just seized a tanker on the coast of Venezuela, large tanker, very large. Largest one ever seized, actually. It was seized for a very good reason.
Venezuela's government is responding and calling the U.S. seizure a barefaced robbery and act of international piracy that they say is aimed at taking the country's oil. The president was asked about what's going to happen to the oil on that tanker, which we are told here at CNN was headed for Cuba.
What happens to the oil on this ship?
Well, we keep it, I guess.
Where does it go? What port does it go to?
Well, you have to follow the tanker. You know, you're a good newsman, just follow the tanker.
Now, for Venezuela's leader, oil is big money, and money is power. The Trump administration has accused him of running a narco-terrorist cartel, sending drugs to the United States. And we're told the seizure happened in international waters and that there were no casualties in this scene that you see here among the U.S. forces or for the ship's crew. This tanker, named the Skipper, was under U.S. sanctions actually for its role in shipping oil from Venezuela and Iran previously. And experts tell us that this appears to be a legally justified and by-the-book mission. But I should note tonight that seizing sanctioned oil is notably a different mission from what we've been hearing from top Trump administration officials. And the reason that they have declared is behind the largest U.S. military buildup that we have seen in the Caribbean in decades.
There's massive amounts of drugs coming into our country to kill a lot of people.
We want to make sure that our young people stop dying of this terrible poison, this fentanyl and other drugs that are being brought in by these cartels.
The president's been very clear that he's going to use the full power of America and the full might of the United States to take on and eradicate these drug cartels.
The American people are safer because narco-terrorists know you can't bring drugs through the water and eventually on land if necessary to the American people.
Maduro uses foreign terrorist organizations like TDA, Sinaloa, and Cartel of the Suns to bring deadly drugs and violence into our country.
Stopping the flow of drugs is the reason that we've been given for those nearly 24 boat strikes that have happened since September. Critics have said that the Trump administration is using the drug war as a pretense for regime change in Venezuela. And the president declared just yesterday that the Venezuelan leader's days are, as he put it, numbered. My sources tonight bring decades of real-world experience to this conversation. We've got retired Air Force Colonel Cedric Leighton and the former Deputy Director of National Intelligence, Beth Sanner, here with us. And Colonel, first, I just want to talk about this video because the president, we had heard rumblings this was happening. The president confirmed it moments later when the reporters were inside the room. And then Pam Bondi released this video. We'll show it again here. It's quite remarkable. Can you just tell me what you're seeing when you look at this video?
Yeah, Caitlin. So what you're seeing here is basically they're fast roping down from the helicopter onto the deck. This is one of the Maritime Response Forces. These are basically the Coast Guard's version of Special Operations Forces. They have two teams, one on the East Coast, another one on the West Coast. This one is the one from the East Coast, and what they're doing here is they're going into where basically the pilot house where the captain of the ship, the skipper of the ship, is actually steering it, and they take that over first, basically to control the ship. And in this case, the skipper, as the ship is known, is this large oil tanker, and that oil tanker is basically designed to take a large amount of oil from ports in the Middle East to other places. The other thing that's interesting about this ship is it's probably owned by a Russian oligarch. So there's a connection here between the Russian oligarchs and the Iranians, as well as what you see here with Venezuela.
Yeah, and it was sanctioned by the Biden administration previously. Beth, what's your read when you look at this? Because I think some people saw this today and thought, wow, get the alarm, given of what's been happening with the boat strikes. But maybe there's a little bit of a difference in the two of these.
I think there's a huge difference. I mean, one is that this is a sanctioned vessel doing business that has been, not just the Biden administration, Trump 1, Biden, continued sanctions against the Maduro regime, PDVSA being the national oil company, as well as these tankers. And these tankers, as Cedric was saying, is part of this kind of international shadow fleet and Iranian linked. And there was oil going back and forth between Iran and Venezuela for many years. And this is just part of this trade. So I personally think that, you know, if you're going to have 20% of our deployed naval forces in the Caribbean, I think that, you know, interdicting the lifeblood of this illegitimate regime is something that is a positive thing. But I think the real question is, the reason that we're all wondering is, no one really knows why they're there. There's lack of clarity. So if they had gone in and said, oh, we're trying to stranglehold this Maduro regime so he will step down, that would be one thing. But we don't really know. We get drugs, we get immigration, we get this.
Yeah, we've been hearing a lot of different reasons. It's a huge buildup, as we were showing, that's playing out there right now. Maduro himself was seen earlier. He was singing, "Don't worry, be happy." I think that is obviously not the message the Trump administration is trying to send to him. But I wonder what you make of how he's, what you read into how he's looking at all of this.
Yeah, I think Maduro is trying to put the best face he possibly can on this. And, you know, when you see him doing these kinds of things, he's looking at this in a way where he is going to try to outlast anything that the U.S. is doing. But one other thing I wanted to add to Beth's point about the forces that are arrayed there, keep in mind who is the lead agency in this particular case. It was the Coast Guard. Everything that was done here was by the book in terms of they had a warrant, they had all the things.
Why does it matter that it was the Coast Guard?
Well, the Coast Guard is a Homeland Security asset, and they are charged with carrying out the laws when it comes to law enforcement missions. Exactly. And what they're doing as a law enforcement entity is they're interdicting drugs just like they've done hundreds of times before. And that's really what they're up
And
to.
they wanted to do this under Trump 1. But they didn't have the forces in the region in order to interdict these boats that were these oil tankers.
And is that something that you ever talked about in your briefings? And
I will never tell.
Okay, well, Beth Sanner, I had to try, you know. Beth Sanner, always keeping her intelligence secrets. Colonel Cedric Leighton as well. Thank you both for being here. I've also got a U.S. Senator who sits on the Foreign Relations and Armed Services Committee here with me, Democrat of Virginia, Senator Tim Kaine. And thank you, Senator, for being here. I do think on the premise of what we've heard of why there is such a huge military buildup, U.S. military buildup in the Caribbean, one question some people might have tonight is how seizing an oil tanker helps stop the flow of drugs into the U.S. What would you say to that?
Well, Caitlin, I think it just raises even more questions about what is this mission about. I'll say this, the strikes on the boats in international waters, the evidence is flimsy about whether each of these strikes is going against a boat that's actually carrying drugs. I can't say more than that because what I know from classified settings, since the Senate has been unwilling to hold a single public hearing in either the Armed Services Committee or the Foreign Relations Committee about this military operation. But the whole notion that these strikes are to stop boats with drugs on them is flimsy in my view. And now here we have the seizure of an oil tanker. Is it about drugs? Is it about the seizing of oil? The president says the U.S. will keep the oil. Is it about regime change? Why exactly have we deployed so many of our troops, including Virginians, into a mission where we're using military action to kill people, to slaughter survivors of shipwrecks on the open sea in violation of U.S. and international law, and to do so in a way that even key Pentagon leaders, the head of Southcom, the legal advisor of Southcom, key allies like the UK are raising serious questions about the legality of this entire mission. It's time for Congress to take this out of the classified facility and have public hearings about it so the American public can see what's really at stake.
Yeah, I think people would like to hear what y'all are hearing behind closed doors. But on this tanker, just for a moment, it was sanctioned by President Biden, by his administration. Do you believe that the Trump administration has the legal authority to do what they did today?
They haven't presented that authority to Congress, and I'd want to dig into it. If it was just a matter, if what the Trump administration was doing was only this, that would be one thing. But to do this together with boat strikes that are killing folks, to say, as the president has, that he's authorized covert operations in Venezuela, that he may well soon start a land invasion in Venezuela, and to amass military troops surrounding Venezuela, you've got to look at this in the context of all of these recent actions, which raise huge questions for my constituents, many of which I'm not allowed to answer because the only thing that the administration has told me about this has been in classified settings. I don't think they want this out to the public. They're walking back, for example, on their promise of President Trump to release the video of the fatal strike on shipwreck survivors, which they said they would do, and now they're walking that back. Let's bring the American public into this and have a debate, transparent debate about why are we doing this, what's at stake, what's the legal rationale.